You got to trust somebody. And then once you've actually taken those initiatives, we got to be careful not to get caught in the third point, which is that bright, shiny out.
So this idea that you're the bottleneck, Jim Rohn used to say this, stop majoring in minor things.
Hey, law firm owners, welcome to the Your Practice Mastered podcast. We're your host. I'm Michael Strauch. Call me MPS for short.
I'm Richard James. Welcome to today's show. We're going to be talking to you about the things that are getting in the way or they're struggling with at law firms. Is that right?
Yeah, the biggest weakness facing your law firm right now.
Weakness. So the SWOT, the strength, weakness, opportunity, and threat. What's a threat to your law firm? What's a weakness to your law firm?
Yeah, well, they may or may not like to hear this answer, but I think this podcast is a little bit more about giving them what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear.
Yeah. So, yes, I agree with you. It's sometimes my wife, your mother, would tell me that her least favorite characteristic about me is my willingness and ability to hold the mirror up to somebody's face. And she suggests that I should often take time and look in the mirror myself.
Well, I think we all could.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, to be clear, I'm a hot mess, just like you are. My business is no different than yours.
Take the oath.
Right?
Yeah.
We made every mistake there is in the book. It's why we can do what we do because of the number of mistakes we've made. I mean, you've been doing this since you were 13. And so we gained, Maxim Gladwell's 10,000 hours in your short period of life. And I've been doing this since I was 18 and I'm 53. And so I've gained the 10,000 hours that everybody talks about. It just means that he made enough mistakes to learn from them. And so we're going to talk about that one big thing that's in the way for law firms, and that is
You.
Yeah. We don't mean it in a drug.
Of course not.
We already know they're intelligent.
Yeah. You made it through law school. You passed the bar exam. Intelligence is not in question at all.
Work ethic.
Also not in question. For many of you, you might have started in another firm putting in heavy hours, and now you shifted over to owning your own firm. And just to shift to owning your own firm, we know how much is involved in doing that. So work ethic's not in question at all.
Desire to serve their clients.
I would say, for the most part, not in question at all.
In question at all. This isn't a question of their integrity or their willingness. We're talking about three fundamental things. We're talking about, first, we'll put it under the category of knowledge.
Yep.
Got some notes here, so I'll
We
refer
do.
to them, right?
Yes.
So the second thing we're going to talk about, bottleneck. And the third thing we're going to talk about is bright and shiny objects,
Yes.
right? And so let's talk about knowledge. What do we mean when we say that?
Yeah, I mean, so look, when we talk about knowledge, you got to look at it from this perspective. You've invested lots of time, money, resources to become an excellent lawyer, right? To hone your craft and become an excellent lawyer. But you probably have not spent that much time, money, and resources at becoming a great small business owner.
Yeah. So we say we fill the gap, right? That's what our job is here.
Exactly.
Right? We're going to invest our time and resources into creating this information for you so we can help you fill the gap. By the way, why don't we tell them about the
gentleman's agreement.
Yeah, the
gentleman's agreement. Yeah, so look, we put our time, money, and resources into this podcast for you. We want to make sure you're getting value out of it. All we ask for in exchange is that if you enjoy this and it's not your first time watching or listening on whatever platform you're on, that you give us the opportunity, go ahead and hit that subscribe button or follow button, depending on your platform. Turn the bell notifications on. And if it's helpful, feel free to share it with a peer or a colleague of yours as well. That's our only ask to you on this show.
Yep. Basic gentleman's agreement. So back to the show. This idea of knowledge base. So Michael said, this is how much time, money, and resources you put in a great lawyer at your particular practice area. And this is how much most small law firm owners put into becoming great small business owners. And it's not because of a lack of interest necessarily. It's often because of a lack of time and some other things we're going to talk about. And our job is to help fill the gap, right? To understand how to actually run a small business. Now, I think we should address something in the room, right? Because there's some thought leaders out there that teach, but my experience is they've never actually done it themselves.
Yeah. So look, I think you're spot on with that. And some have their strategies and ways that they've developed over time. But why don't you tell them a little bit more about how that differs with us a little bit?
Well, so to be careful, I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody. You want to be careful. You will become the average of the 5 people you spend your most time with. That's what Jim Rohn said, right? And so I want to spend time with people who have actually done it.
Right.
And so also prefer to do work with people who've actually done it in my industry. I can remember years ago, I hired E-Myth guy, and he was from Michael Gerber's organization,
Mm-hmm.
and I paid him a whole bunch of money to be my consultant, and that's when I owned the pet supply business.
Right.
And so one of the challenges was every time I talked to the guy, we get on the phone, and I felt like every single call, I was educating him about my business because he didn't know enough to give me proper advice.
I was in a similar boat. I invested money and time in a mastermind, and I loved the connections. The connections were great, but prior business, no one was in YouTube. And so it was hard for them to really relate and provide feedback on the business and where there were opportunities or where I was going wrong, which obviously could be a little frustrating.
Yeah. And so there's the mismatch of they don't understand nomenclature or they don't understand the industry. But then the real dangerous one is there's this mismatch in what the desired outcome is.
True.
Because so many people have this desire, like thought leaders have this desired outcome of generating more leads and making your marketing work or generating more revenue even.
Mm-hmm.
But you know how many attorneys I've met that their life sucks because they don't, the profitability. I know we covered this in another topic, but be really careful about who you listen to. I'm just for what it's worth. We come from this perspective. The knowledge gap that we want to fill is understand fundamentally how you can grow more profit in your firm. The reason why you want to be able to do that is because step one, what you get to keep some of it. But step two, what does having more profit in their firm allow them to do?
Well, it allows them to reinvest in the firm and grow it.
Which allows you fundamentally to serve more family.
Mm.
So you're really good at what you do and you change people's lives because in our opinion, you do God's work because we hear all the phone calls. So we know the challenges you guys face on a daily, guys and gals, face on a daily basis when it comes to your clientele, right? They've got real challenges.
Much so.
And you save them a whole bunch of time, aggravation, and in many cases money if you do your job right. And so I believe you should be able to acquire more of those people by investing your profit back into your company and growing it. But when you grow it so that it maintains profitability. So this is the lens that we view this through, right? So for us, it's this lack of knowledge of not only how to run a small business, but how to be a great manager, a great leader, right? What are some of the biggest challenges you see when it comes to, owners of a small law firm managing or leading their team? Like, do you feel like they know how to do it?
Some better than others, but I mean, the biggest thing I see is just there's not enough time, training, and knowledge passed down to the employee, right? I just don't see enough time invested, or maybe the way we come across to an employee can occasionally be condescending in a way.
There's a reason for that.
I know there is.
I figured that out through the years, and you have too, that attorneys, because they're intelligent, because they're hardworking, because they've been, beaten to death by law school, browbeated with a certain way of thinking, they make an assumption that everybody else that comes and works for their firm should kind of act the same way and have the same talent and skills. And oftentimes they don't. And it's harder and harder to find those people these days. And this is why we've come to believe through the years that no, systems should run your law firm and people should run your systems, right? Mm-hmm. And so, have you found when lawyers who were maybe originally cantankerous, let's call it that way, they were maybe a little bit, not as friendly with their team?
Sure.
Once they put systems in place, they become better leaders and better managers?
Naturally, because now you've actually got structure in place across all of the functions of your firm. And then when those people that you put in place to run those systems understand how it runs, not everything is pure chaos. So there's just more structure brought to everything.
By the way, I'm not suggesting to you that this is easy. Like, okay, running a small business is hard.
It doesn't matter if it's a law firm, any small business is hard.
But running a law firm is harder.
It is.
It just is.
It is.
You've got opposing counsel. You've got judges or trustees. You've got the bar association. And then you have clients and their real life problems. And then you have the matter that you have to actually manage to get a good result. And oftentimes it means the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. And it's a very, very difficult business. The product itself is a difficult business. There's a reason why you can be as profitable as you can be.
Yeah.
The fact that some law firms do such a great job for their clients and kill it in the work and they're not profitable drives me bananas.
It's disappointing to see.
Because they work so hard at being so good and create such value, and then they work for nothing. How many times I wrote that book, The Favor, around this idea of Attorney Johnson and how he was growing, but his income didn't grow along with it. His firm got bigger. He had more employees, but he didn't make any more damn money.
Right.
You know, and so I know it was a fictional story that I wrote, but man, it's so true. It happens so often.
You see that come through more often than you'd like to see. That's for sure.
Now, one of the things I think it happens is because the second point we talked about with them being a bottleneck.
Yeah.
What talk about that? What is the issue with them being a bottleneck? Where are they a bottleneck, and why is it a problem?
Usually a bottleneck in just about every system in the firm at some point, and there's a reason for that, because if you start out small and solo and it's just you're used to wearing all the hats. So you have to be the one overseeing every function of the firm. And so when you do bring an employee in, it's hard to stop wearing that hat and to be micromanaging that particular process. So when it comes to different functions of the firm that I see attorneys, the law firm owner, become the bottleneck, it's intake, right? They're still answering the phones plus managing all of the
No. The phones are ringing their cell phone.
Yeah, sure.
And then it tries to go to voicemail because the attorney's in court.
Right.
There's no voicemail because the voicemail says voicemail is full.
Full. Yeah, inbox is full. Right. So now
bottleneck number one.
Now our ability to get more leads and to set appointments is at capacity because there's literally no capacity in your voicemail to even return a phone call.
Right.
So you got that. That's one bottleneck, right? If you carry down the line, you've got the next bottleneck, which is consultations, right? Most attorneys are still most attorneys that run a small law firm are still running their own consultations. Well, I would tell you that sales is probably the most on-demand role in a law firm, okay? Because you have clients that have a need at different given points in a day, and you've kind of got to drop everything, run a consultation, never mind the fact that's the lifeblood of your business. Without running consultations, you don't have any clients, but it chews up so much capacity in your schedule.
And then they have to get the work done after they sell the client.
Right, which is the next part, and that's where the next bottleneck comes into play. Now you've sold the client. Congratulations, good work. You got to go and get all the work done, and depending on how many team members you've got on your firm, now this is where you start to see that feast and famine cycle kick in, because now all of a sudden you've done all this marketing to generate leads, to get the deal closed. Well, now you've actually got to go fulfill the work, and if you're fulfilling the work, now you don't have time to answer the new lead calls and run the consultation. So now you got to turn off marketing. Hopefully not, but in many cases you do. So that way,
or ignore it,
which is almost worse. And now you get into this feast and famine cycle. So you could see every system in a law firm, you start to become a bottleneck at some point.
And they just look like this.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
They just have this look on their face that just says, help, what did I do? What did I sign up for?
Well, just me talking about each of those bottlenecks, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of different functions in a firm. I mean, I don't blame you. I would have the look on my face too.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about getting paid.
No, that's a whole separate conversation, right? You close a deal, you do the work, you got them on a payment plan or on a retainer, and now you're chasing down payments to make sure that what they said that they were going to pay, they actually pay in full, and now you've got to go capture a percentage of that, and you're wearing that hat too, oh, by the way.
Now, it comes back to sometimes, again, to bring this full circle, the reason why they become a bottleneck is so we know, okay, we know what bottlenecks that happen, and we know what problems it cause.
Sure.
Why does it happen? So I think why it happens stems to the first point we made, which is sometimes they expect that their staff should just be smart enough to be able to handle, hardworking and smart enough to handle the job they give them, and many times they end up disappointed. Do you ever end up disappointed when you have new staff sign on with your company? Yeah, I mean, that's the reality, right? It happens. And so they get trained that if it's going to get done right, it's got done by me. Do you agree with this?
I agree with that, and I would take it one step further. There's also several law firm owners that are listening to this that are small and solo, that are at that place where they've realized they're the bottleneck, but haven't actually even hired staff yet. So I would say it even starts there, like being willing and open to take that next step of leveraging staff to be able to remove yourself from those roles.
Yeah, well, and they weren't taught how to be a manager.
Right.
Maybe they're introverted by nature. They really don't want to be a manager. And so it freaks them out that they're going to have to be employees. They've heard horror stories from all of their, their peers about having bad staff and staff stealing from them. Hey, listen, we've heard it. We've heard staff members have stolen from clients before they came into our world at a tune of $250,000, right? Because there was no system running the firm. The firm put all their trust in a human being.
Yep.
Not having the trust in the system and allow good human beings to run the system, right? We got it in reverse.
The paradigm there,
The paradigm was changed. And so, for you, if you're a bottleneck for the firm and you find you are that bottleneck because just basic trust issues, then that's a mental thing that you've got to figure out. Start with, okay, I'm going to be committed to learn how to put systems in place. And then you have to be, okay, once I have the systems in place, I got to trust somebody.
You got to trust somebody. And then once you've actually taken those initiatives, we got to be careful not to get caught in the third point, which is that bright, shining out.
Yeah. I completely agree with you. One more thing on the bottleneck thing. So, before I go there, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So this idea that you're the bottleneck. The other thing is, Jim Rohn used to say this, stop majoring in minor things. So I don't know if you have an example of when you did this as a business owner, but I can tell you me. So I remember way back when I was 23 years old, I was 24. I was in the funeral business. And my best friend's dad, and this was in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and it was like a 60-car funeral. Now, you probably don't know what that means even though you were kind of raised around that business. Most of you might know what that means. A 60-car funeral deal. This is an Irish funeral in Scranton, Pennsylvania, right? And so it's my friend's dad's funeral. He chose to come to my funeral home, even though it was across town. Like in our town, you didn't cross the river to go do business with a funeral home over there. You did, business with the funeral home on that side of the river, and it was an Irish funeral. And so I'm a German funeral home across the river. I mean, unheard of that he came over there. So I'm thinking, boy, I'm going to be able to win people over. So I want to make a great impression.
Yep.
And I've got these guys who have been working with me now. They've been working with my family for 10 years, 20 years. They've been working for me for at least a year now. And I know what they're capable of, but I want it perfect. And so I think to myself, I got to make sure it's perfect. It likely parked every single one of those 60 cars so that it was lined up perfect. And my uncle's standing up on the porch and he's watching. And the guys are all standing like this. There's 4 guys watching me park every single car. And I felt so good about what I did. And the guys even said, "Oh, good job, Richie. Good job." You know what I mean? And my uncle came up and afterwards, after it was all said and done, and he said, "Hey," he goes, "Nice job with those cars." He goes, "By the way, while you were parking all those cars, there were 3 ladies that needed something inside, and grandmother helped them out. And there was 2 changes in the car list that I took care of for you." He said, he goes, "If you keep being the car park, you can't be the general." He says, "Great job parking the cars, but you just spent a whole bunch of time doing things that you shouldn't be doing because there's other people that can do it. Even if they couldn't park the car as good as you could, they could get it really, really close. And it wasn't a big deal if they got it 80 or 85%, right?" And so I think lawyers get caught because they're professionals into having a really hard time of letting go of the, let's call them the $15 or $20 today's day and age, $20 an hour jobs, $25 an hour jobs, right? They have a hard time letting go. They're billing out at $500 an hour, and yes, you should be billing out at $500 an hour by now. Just saying, but you're billing out at $500 an hour, and they're taking a $25 an hour job, and they're doing it on themselves because they think that they're going to do it right, and that's the way to do it. And that's a mentality issue. So let's come back to the final one, which you said bright and shiny. Talk to me about that. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, just making sure that we stay focused on the goal at hand and implement the proper structures and systems. For many firms, what I see in terms of bright, shiny object is a new practice area, right? We maybe haven't mastered and fully gotten all of our systems in place for our existing practice area. And now we think it's a good idea to go add another practice area because maybe we heard something good about it. Maybe we saw that it's starting to perform at a higher rate because of macroeconomics. And all of a sudden we want to introduce this new practice area. I mean, in my time alone, I've seen a lot of firms make that call and end up regretting it in some way, shape, or form.
They weren't ready.
They weren't ready.
They weren't ready. Yeah. Chasing the bright and shiny. They think the grass is greener somewhere else.
Right.
But the reality is the systems that run the new practice area, the same systems that should have been in place to run the old practice area. I used to say it differently. It used to be before practice areas and before the pandemic era, everybody thought they needed another office.
Oh, well, yeah.
Another location. I used to say all the time, you want to find out how good your systems are? Go ahead and open up another location. To your point, want to find out how good your systems are? Go ahead and start another practice area.
Right.
It's happened so many times. I've lost count at this point.
Well, even just in the last year and a half alone, because of COVID, caused a lot of firms that had maybe a declining practice area to them shift into a different type of practice area, and it really put the systems to test.
Some of them succeeded.
But
we're not suggesting you shouldn't do it.
No, if you've got your systems in place and you're running at optimum and you see an opportunity, I just call that grabbing an opportunity and taking it. But if you don't have your systems in place running at optimum, you're just going to speed up the pace at which you find out your systems aren't ready.
So what about the other bright and shiny stuff, like marketing and things like that?
I would say there's a good balance, right? Because you don't want to be completely oblivious to all of the tools and resources out there to make marketing more efficient, but you also don't want to get taken down such a rabbit hole that's now your only focus, right?
Yeah, and I think, do you think, I'm curious about your opinion, do you think attorneys they would prefer to just be able to go pay a vendor to get them new leads that'll give them new clients and not pay attention to the sales and selling systems of setting appointments and getting the show and get them the hire, get them the pay?
For many attorneys, they don't like doing that in the first place. And secondly, it's easier. It's easier for them to do that, which is fine. And I'm not going to argue that maybe there's a little bit more ease to it. But now we don't have a grip on exactly what marketing looks like, what our metrics look like, how many of those leads are turning into appointments, how many of those appointments are showing up, and then how many of those appointments that show up are we actually closing? And I'll tell you the answer is probably not, if they come into the office, I'll close, because that's wrong for the most part.
Yeah, it's funny. So I'm calling what you say that the lead conversion machine system's in place. Okay, so let's go with that. So here's what works. Here's how got it. So I'm dating myself a little bit, but it is what it is. So when I built a law firm in Phoenix, we had the yellow page salesman. Okay, so
only dating yourself a little bit.
So the yellow page guy comes into the door to make the sale. Now we had the front page and the back page of the yellow pages. Okay. With front inside cover and back inside covers are actually what we had of the yellow. Of all the books in Phoenix, that's what we bought. And I could tell you, by the way, the difference in conversion between the inside front cover and the inside back cover.
I'm sure you could.
And so I knew the lead conversion machine was in place. I knew exactly what it cost me to create a client. And we found the yellow pages were starting to wane to the point that pay-per-click was taking over and yellow pages were starting to barely break even. They were coming back. If you never had to buy yellow pages, but when you buy a yellow page ad, you're literally like, they send out one book, right? So you have to pay for that ad for the whole year. Right. So you only get one print shot. So like, if it's 60 grand for the year, you're paying 60 grand and you're in, right?
Yep.
And so for the next year, he's got to sell you why you're going to do this again next year. And for many years, Yellow Pages was the one thing, and you kept upping your game to buy more, right?
Sure.
But now all of a sudden it's declining. And so now they realize this, and they come in with a pitch. And they pitch me about this guaranteed lead process. Well, they called it impression process because they were the internet.
Yeah.
So they gave me this guarantee, right? And so I'm like, all right, I'll bite. Tell me what your guarantee is. And they tell me the guarantee, and I get up on my whiteboard, and I get my pen, and I go, tell me that guarantee again. And it was like, we guarantee you 100 whatever, right? And I go, okay, 100 whatever. So we know that those 100 impressions, we get about 3% click rate on those 100 impressions. And of those 3 clicks, we convert about 1.5 of those into a lead, depending on the landing page. So let's call it one of those into a lead. And then of those probably, we're converting 25 to 30%. So we don't even get client for this. And so all you're doing is guaranteeing me a pile of crap.
Basically.
Right? But they try to hide behind these weird guarantees.
Impressions, the eyeballs that lay on your stuff.
But when you have a lead conversion machine in place, nobody can pull the wool over your eyes.
No, especially when you have the machine in place, plus your numbers.
Correct. When you know your basic, it's just basic arithmetic, folks. We're not asking you to know advanced calculus here, right? It's just addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, right? So, and I know that not a lot of attorneys love math. I get that.
We're not talking complex math.
Yes. I mean, some attorneys literally went to law school so they could avoid ever having to deal with math and science.
Sure.
Again, I hear that all the time. I get it, but this isn't complicated. They're intelligent people. They can figure it out, right? And so I'm just saying, look, having a lead conversion machine or not having a lead conversion machine prevents you. Now, let me say it better. If you have a lead conversion machine, it helps you prevent chasing after the bright and shiny because you can tell the frauds from the real opportunities.
Very true.
To your point, there's got to be a happy mix.
Yes.
Right? There are times when you should take on the opportunity.
Right, because there's tools out there, there's different marketing tactics out there, and it's always good to test, especially from a marketing perspective. It's always good to test as long as you've got, again, the lead conversion machine in place and know your numbers and know what you're actually testing.
Yeah. So, cover 3. Well, first we said it was their fault. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry about that, but...
Yeah. 3 reasons we gave them was 1, knowledge, and then...
We talked about them being the bottleneck.
And then the final one was that...
Bright, shiny objects.
Bright and shiny objects. So if we can help you overcome that, if you can know the truth, that's really what our goal was today, to help you know the truth. If you know the truth, well, then you could do something about it. And so we're not calling you out. We're not, calling the baby ugly. We're just saying this is the reality of what we find after dealing with thousands and thousands of firms through the years, right?
Yeah.
So I hope this was helpful to you. Hope it inspired you to take a look. And we've talked about the gentleman's agreement.
Yeah, again, if you found value in today's session, go ahead and hit that subscribe button or that follow button, depending on the platform you're listening to. Turn those bell notifications on. Comment. We love to engage with that. And if you found it super valuable, share it with a peer.
Yeah. All right. Hey, today was a good show.
Today was a good show.
Yeah, I love it.
Thanks for tuning in.
All right. Thanks.